Have a Dream app features speeches by Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. When you finish the app, it will work something like this.
I have a dream that my 4 little children.
When you click on Malcolm.
What is your real name? Malcolm X.
When you click off, it should stop. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to find the I Have a Dream template. It's on the CS2 website. It's also here on the handout. You click this, open up your own template. It'll look something like this. There shouldn't be any components on the screen yet, but you'll notice on the template I've already given you the files. So there's some JPEGs for images, some MP3s for sound files. First thing we need to do is structure our screen. We learned how to do some structuring of the screen using rows and columns in the Four Corners app. We're going to do something very similar. So we're going to pull out 2 rows. And something to notice is you can get to a lot of the components just from the search bar. It can be a lot easier than scrolling through. So pull out 1 row, and I'm going to change the height to relative size, say 50%. And even though it's in the middle, that's okay. We're going to pull out another row, and it ended up on the top. That's totally fine. I'm going to change it to relative size 50. So we have some rows started. The next thing we want to do is add some columns to the top row. So under here we can just search for a column, pull 1, and we're going to change the width to a relative size of 50, and we want to pull out 1 more column. And even though it looks like it's on top, we may have to move it around a little bit. It's also a relative size of 50, and since it's not quite what we want it, we'll play around with it. So we have column 1 and column 2. Excellent. And we're actually going to add 1 more column. We're only going to add it to the bottom row. So we'll add 1 more column. I'm going to put it in the bottom row. We're not going to do anything with it just yet. Alrighty. Our next move is we want to add some image components. So once again, we can do the search, find image. We're going to put an image in column 1. We're going to put an image in column 2. And we'll see on the properties part, we can start to put our pictures. So we want one of, how about do Malcolm on the right, and over here we'll put MLK on the left. Next thing we want to do is we want to add some buttons. So the buttons are for when we click those buttons, the speeches should play. So add a button here, and we can try to do it here, moving. We want the button under, but we can also go up in here, and just move it under the image. Sometimes that's a little easier. Want another button that will, once again, kind of start it above Malcolm, we want it below Malcolm, so we'll go like that. So here we have the first button. We want to rename it. This is a button we're going to call MLK Play. And we want the text on it to say MLK Play. And we're going to do the same thing for Malcolm X. So we want to say, click this little icon here, Malcolm X button. And then we want it to say Malcolm X Play. Alrighty, so now we got our buttons in place. Next thing we want to do is we want to add sort of our instructions and 1 more image. So we're going to add another image, pull it down here, and we're going to set the picture to Malcolm and MLK together. And then we want to set it a little differently in there so it's nicely centered. So we'll go 75 at the height, and the width will also be 75. Looking good. Last thing we're going to need for our user interface, we're going to need a label. I'm going to pop that label in here. I don't know where it went. Mr. Label, in there. Okay, let's try this again. We want a label. I'm going to pull it over here, and there it is, popped up on top. We actually want it below. And the text of this label should say, click buttons to play speeches. Alrighty, so that is our user interface. We want to do one last thing with the interface. We want to add a sound component. This is an invisible component. We won't actually see it. I'm going to put one here. And so sound 1, we want to set that source to the king.mp3. We're going to add 1 more sound component. And we're going to set that one to malcolmx.mp3. Okay, that is the end of part 1. This is our user interface that we're going to be using. move on to part 2 when you're ready to program your app.